when you're moving quickly and you're always uncomfortable, you always have imposter syndrome or whatnot. It's just sort of the nature of the beast.
Sure.
Right? But I think if you look back, like there's no better evidence than what have you done in the last 10 years? Okay, great. What have you done in the last 3 years? What have you done in the last year to prove to yourself that you're the person that can do the things in the future? I think that's really the key. What's up, Maddie?
Rick, what's going on?
You know what's going on. 32 years.
I know, man. 32 years. How's that feel?
It feels like 32 years. Exactly, actually. Let me make sure I got my stuff ready. So, yeah, man, 32 years in business. Actually, we blew right past it. It was in September.
Well, that's good. That's how busy we are. We don't even
That's
have time.
what I'm saying.
No time to celebrate.
When you're just slanging franchises, you don't have time to celebrate.
32. I mean, how's that feel, really? Like, just let that sink
honestly,
in.
like, I will say this. I do say this a lot. It's like, it's both humbling, like, in a good way, and also a little bit embarrassing. Because, like, I mean, obviously, like, people try to be nice and are like, oh, you must have opened when you were 10. I'm like, all right, stop. I get it. But you know what I mean? And like now when I go speak at an event, especially if it's full of like coaches and trainers, I'm like, who here was born after 1992? And probably half the room's hands goes up. I'm like, good. So you were a twinkle in your pappy's eye. I was already training people back then.
What's the success rate on like just random business starting? You know?
I don't know. I forgot what the percentage chances of making it to 5 years are, especially in a privately owned business.
Yeah.
It's much higher in a franchise, but in a privately owned business, it's like a really small percentage. So the chances you make it 32 years have to be minuscule.
Yeah.
And I'm in the same location.
Yeah.
32 years.
In no way is that depressing.
Was that something you were going to bring up?
Yeah. No. Well, it's remarkable. It's cool. I don't think, you don't think about it much because we just keep going forward. It's kind of mentality around here. But I mean,
I know.
22 years old or 23, 22?
22.
Yeah. As you go back and give yourself the keys again, what would you do? If you were buying a franchise at 22, what would you tell that person?
Yo, I don't know. Just follow the process, like because I had to figure it all out on my own. That's what I love about franchising. Man. It's like just do it because like otherwise you got to do all your own mistakes. And it sounds sexy and glorified and like I'm blazing a new trail and it's all, but it's actually just a ton of work and it's really hard. So I love franchising.
That's why you get a franchise, dude. Go through all of it.
Well, I say this, it sounds self-serving now, but like based on what I know about the bandwidth you get from a franchise, even if I was just leaving what I do and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And, I'm like, I want to start a new business. I would buy a franchise. There is so much bandwidth and help in a franchise. There's no way I would start a business from scratch. You'd have to be a lunatic.
Yeah.
Absolute lunatic.
Well, there's so many things you think like you have no idea about, right, in business.
No.
It's like, I want to start a gym. It's like, okay, well, you know about anything about marketing? Do you know about sales? I think most people tell me. I know how to train people.
Yeah. Like if you come from the training side, it's like, that's probably the easiest thing to do, right? Is the actual training. Like that's the part we do really well. So yeah, man. So we blew over it, but this is our annual 32-year wrap-up podcast. We did one for 30. We did one for 31. This is a one for 32.
Yeah. And we got drinks too. You going to tell them? We got a cheers to it.
Yeah, we do. So Matt bought me.
Cheers.
Cheers to you, buddy. Yikes.
It's getting better every year.
It is.
It's been sitting on the shelf.
It's aged. So Matt bought me some, what'd you buy me? Was it Woodbury?
I think Woodford.
Woodford. Yeah, Woodford Preserve. What's Woodbury? What am I talking about? Woodford Preserve, a really nice batch of that. And I save it for these every year because it doesn't age out. And we sip it every year. So
yeah, 3 years in.
Here's the middle of the day. Sad. We still have a bunch of shit to do today, but we're just going to have a tiny bit. Like last year we had 2 mini drinks. This year, just a little bit. So anyway, cheers to you, brother. You've been here how many years of those 32? You've been almost here, almost half of the years I've been in business. You've been here.
Was it 15? Here since, I've been going almost 15 years.
Yeah. So cheers to you. That's half the time. You've seen a ton of evolution, haven't you?
Yeah, I came at the perfect time.
Yeah, because I was out and you were in.
Yeah, you just changing everything. So I got to ride along the whole thing, which was nice. Yep. So
I mean, you had to be tolerant of change because you got to go through all that. I mean, that really means that you're an entrepreneur at the end of the day because you have to tolerate a ton of change. And, it's funny because I know you're as bad as me at celebrating wins. I told you I just read The Gap in the Gain, which I really enjoyed. And that's apparently not a great way to live. You should actually celebrate your wins. I always thought it would be a detriment to continuing to push on, right? Like if you spend too much time looking back, celebrating your wins, it will detract from your hustle and your push forward. Apparently it doesn't do that. So we should probably do a better job of that. But then I was thinking about I started laughing because I was thinking about you and I and how we think about that. It's like, so what? We still have a ton of stuff to do. And if you work really hard and you do all the right things, ideally, if you connect all the dots, the thing that you want to happen should theoretically happen. You just keep working hard and you're going to run into roadblocks and whatever, but you keep moving forward and you're going to get there. And then when you get there, the goalpost has already moved. You're not surprised because you had to bust your ass to get there anyway. If you did the math, of course you're going to get there because you follow the path that you knew to get there. It was just hard, right? And you didn't quit. But in the spirit of celebrating wins, I was laughing about you because I'm like, all right, you came here as a part-time trainer. You had just gotten into personal training. You're working at LA Fitness, right? Mm-hmm. You recognize that it's not the ideal environment for you. You came here, and that was when we were doing some really out-of-the-box, newer kind of training. You offered to work here for free, essentially, to take a mentorship here and spend your time for free to learn. And you were taking the things you learned here and actually implementing them down the street at like LA Fitness. And it was like, this is weird. And people don't know what to do because the training styles were different back then. But then you did such a good job. Then you worked your way into a part-time role and then a full-time role. And then you became the director. And I mean, this is over this 15-year period. And then you started writing all the programs. You took that over for licensing, which is a couple thousand clubs. You were an integral part of the Anytime Fitness integration that we did when we were licensing. And then now you're the VP of all club ops, which is customer experience, workouts, sales, like the whole thing. So it's like, sometimes it's good to look back. Because if you don't realize how far you've gone. And what it will do, I think, Matt, if you do that, I think it will allow you to look forward and understand that you're built to do whatever it is, right? Because I think at times like when you're moving quickly and you're always uncomfortable, you always have imposter syndrome or whatnot. It's just sort of nature of the beast. Right?
Sure.
But I think if you look back, like there's no better evidence than what have you done in the last 10 years? Okay, great. What have you done in the last 3 years? What have you done in the last year to prove to yourself that you're the person that can do the things in the future? I think that's really the key. And that's maybe what I was missing.
I mean, it was a certain amount of grit, certain amount of toughness. You know, the thing that's been the best about this is like I got to grow within the company and see all the changes, see all the stuff that you were doing. What that has really allowed me to do, especially from the role I'm in now, is I have perspective over everything that we do because I saw you go through it and we talked about all this stuff. So like from a coaching side, again, why you buy franchises, like you may have all these ideas, but like I can literally tell you what works, what doesn't work because I've actually seen it firsthand and done it myself, as you have, obviously.
Yeah. Right? Well, that's what I'm saying. You've been here. So if someone's like, hey, how come you don't train 8 people? It's like, we tried it. It's a class. So we don't do classes. It's like, why not 4? I'm like, because the business model doesn't work. You have to charge so much. The value proposition is not there. So there's so many reasons for everything we do that's so nuanced, but it's literally built on trial and error, failures, corrections, right?
Yep.
So, but when you do look back and you're like, wow, I mean, that's pretty cool. Like when I look at your trajectory, I'm like, that's really freaking awesome that you're built to do that and that you're able to learn and you're able to upskill yourself. And I mean, you had to learn to speak because now you're speaking in front of people and the way you articulate ideas, like all that's part and parcel with the growth. But like, if you're not wired the right way, if you're stuck or you don't recognize, or you're not willing to step into that fearful area, you're never going to grow. You're never going to do that. So
get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cliche saying, but it's freaking true. I'll tell you that much. That's for sure.
I mean, hell, I remember doing the first podcast. It was uncomfortable as hell.
Yeah, I remember that too.
I think I just stared at you for an hour.
Well, when I have people on, I'm like, it's not live. You know, I'm like, and go. And they're like, so at Alloy, I like to do the things. I'm like, listen, dude, chill. It's not even live, right? We're chilling. So when you're on here now, it's like we just feel like we're hanging out for lunch.
We have never, to date, ever, this is always a one-off. So you can say live or not, this thing has never been like we screwed up and we did it again.
No, we could definitely do it live. I've never reshot this.
This has never been
Never
reshot.
once had to reshoot it. And that may be to a detriment. So, and here's what we decided. So Matt and I talked before. We spent a whole year doing Did You Knows. Typically do it on a calendar year, but like based on popular demand and also our personal preference, we're going to switch it back to dad jokes.
All right, dad jokes is back.
I just like dad jokes.
Okay,
come on.
It's good.
Like Did You Knows are good too, but like maybe we'll mix it up. You never know.
I'd say we do that. You know, whatever you got.
So I've got one. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So it was 10 years ago today. Me and a buddy James, or my best buddy James, he came running out of, this place we were visiting, and he comes running out, and he's really excited, and he's like, it's a boy, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome, and then after that we never went back to Thailand again. So it was just like You know, it's a shocker. I mean, you never know what you're going to get. What is it? A box of chocolates? That's going to be the worst dad joke ever told, honestly.
We have to reshoot the podcast.
First time ever. 30-second one. Reshoot.
Ruined with the dad joke.
Oh, the worst. All right, how about this one?
He's got another one.
I'm reading them, by the way. This is lame. It's been a hectic day. So how about this? Matt, I don't mean to brag, but the cashier's been checking me out. All right, you're up.
Mine is definitely just as dumb as that. Why was the cucumber seed late to work?
I don't know.
It was in a bit of a pickle.
Yes, we're back. And we're so easily entertained.
The best part about this is honestly everybody's sending us stuff in to say. Like you'll talk to people like you said, and you do like, you know,
yeah, I'll do the
CEO
founder's
calls.
call, which is sort of the threshold to get here, and people are on deck with Did You Knows on the call. So I love that, man. It just becomes part of our culture. Humor with a touch of crazy, and it gets pretty silly around here. But you know what, dude? We're doing good business, so like you got to keep it light. So, but what we are going to talk about, so each year there's like a lesson, right? And I even turned to last year's like 31 ways to ruin your fitness business. I turned that into a full-on talk, and I did it in probably 4 or 5 different places. I'm actually doing it again this weekend for another group. Just sort of life lessons. You know, it gets more general at times because there's just principles that you follow. It's not necessarily like actionable things that you put into play come Monday. But I think that's where you get eventually, where like there's just some overreaching ideas that you have to follow to be successful. And so that's what we're going to do today. It's like, what are we going to do for 32 years? And so I looked up what happens on a 32-year anniversary. And apparently the 32-year anniversary gift that you would give someone traditionally is called a lapis lazuli, which I didn't know what it was. It's basically it's a rare earth stone. Okay. It's blue in color. I'm like, okay, so that's what you would give as a gift on a 32-year anniversary. But it came, the meaning of the stone is 4 pillars, the meaning of the stone: strength, courage, wisdom, and truth.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, it's 32 years. We'll name this stone I've never heard of and probably never buy. But I like the 4 pillars that come with it. So in the spirit of 32, that's why we chose it. So we'll just go one by one and kind of explain, like, you know, what have we learned about, like, do you need strength and what does that mean in the business, right? Do you need courage? Do you need wisdom? Do you need truth? And go from there.
Was I supposed to buy you the stone?
Yes. I was supposed to get a pendant of some sort from Matt with a lapis lazuli.
Oh, my God. I don't think you're saying it right.
That's
all right.
some shit you can get out of your backyard. I guarantee you it's not expensive, dude. Just get me one. Quit holding out.
Oh, my God. All right. Well, 32 years. What's, strength? What does that mean in business?
Well, look, I mean, we've talked about a lot of these concepts already, but we talked about being entrepreneurs. It's not for whims, right? I often describe it and have heard it described as a self-help journey disguised as a business, because your growth of your business, if you're an entrepreneur, even if you're a franchisee, all your entrepreneurial spirit will be in your leadership abilities to recruit, hire, and train and lead the best talent that you can.
Yep.
Right? That's going to be the key. That's still entrepreneurship. You don't have to create the thing, right? You just have to run the thing.
Sure.
But you have to be a different person. You can't be the same person with one location as you are with 2, and certainly not with 10. And, you know, we've got franchisees with aspirations of 10, 20, whatever that may be. Becoming an entrepreneur is one thing, and then each step of entrepreneurship takes a different version of yourself. So you have to be, per our earlier conversation about where you've gone, right? That's why I said you're entrepreneurial, love it or not. Like, that's how you're built, because you have weathered and actually thrived through all of this crazy change over a 15-year period. Mm-hmm. And it never stops. It just, when you get that train rolling, it just does not stop, right? And so a lot of it is just how willing are you to change and invest in yourself, right? And I think what people don't understand is that change is painful, because to change, it means you have to leave something behind, right? And when you leave something behind, it's sort of the death of that thing, whether it was a characteristic or an identity that you were tied to or a comfort zone. Like, you have to kill it to evolve to be this new person. And I've used this clip with our team, and I've sent it to a lot of people, from a guy named Rick Warren, who runs one of these super churches out west. And he did a great job articulating it. And he's like, listen, you can't have change without pain, right? And you can't have pain without grief, right? So basically what ends up happening is when you go through these changes and you kill off a part of yourself, like it or not, it's painful. And when you do it, you're going to grieve, which sounds really odd. Like, could you grieve the loss of a part of you? And the answer is absolutely you can, right? Mm-hmm. So every time you level up, you're uncomfortable, and you're not only uncomfortable stepping into a role that might seem beyond your skill set at the time, you're maybe right on the hairy edge of what you can hang on to, right? But behind that is the death of some type of habit or characteristic. It's like we've talked about. The person that we are, the team that we are, the individuals that we are now at 200 franchises awarded and 35 open or whatever is not the same people that we're going to have to be with 350 sold and 100 open. It's not. We're going to have to be different people, which means and it could be the very thing that got us from zero to here might be the very thing that holds us back to go from here to the next step, right? Could be, maybe not, or a version of. And that means you got to kill a thought, a belief system, you could break beliefs, whatever those are. And all those things are difficult. But if you understand that when you change, you lose something, and when you lose something, it's painful, and you grieve that pain, then you'll understand like you're supposed to be uncomfortable, right?
Sure.
That makes sense? It's a weird way to think about change is like grieving and pain, but it's a real deal. I mean, we talk about it through the lens of our customers. If you change something as small as a paint colors, right? It's like the familiarity of the facility is a bit different. You wouldn't think it's manifesting itself this way, but it's changed. Change feels like loss because you lost something you're comfortable with. You then have some pain around that, and then you grieve it.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? Uh-huh. But that's the real psychology just explained in a different way. So you just have to get comfortable knowing that you're not going to be that comfortable, honestly.
So strength. You know what I see it from? Because I have a different seat because you've been the one driving the ship, right? Your strength I see. So I've been here, 15 years. There's never been a day from a leadership standpoint, even, and then people that were other leaders in this business where you see like the opposite of that, like weakness, right? You never see anybody that's just like, things may not be going 100%, but everybody's always showing strength. Everybody's still like, dedicated towards the thing. Right. And that makes a big difference, especially, we're growing a company and we're continuing, right? Like that's the opposite, what people see from you. And I honestly you're always the same pretty much the entire time. It's pretty amazing.
I'm not really. I'm really freaking out.
Yeah. I've had that question. Be like, how do you look so calm all the time? I was like, man, I'm a duck on the pond, baby. I look calm, but my feet are going faster than hell under the water.
Yeah. Well, everybody is. And that's the thing when you realize like that's not. And it's also accepting the fact that you're going to have negative feelings because growth is really uncomfortable. So like, all right, but it doesn't mean they're real, and it doesn't mean that you aren't wired for it or that something's wrong. It's like if you expect to feel great all the time while you're trying to accomplish something significant, you're crazy. It doesn't work that way.
But you go out every day and you don't show that in strength. And that's the only way you make it 32 years, let alone, a year, 6 months, whatever it is, right? You have to every day get up ready to go to war. Like better sense.
Yeah, I know. And it sounds like there's this like head-on friction that you're trying to overcome. In some ways you are. And I mean, look, we're kind of wired the same way. So for us, maybe my default is like, F this, I'm going to get up. And it's like, it's not necessarily anger, but it maybe come from that spot where it's like, I'm not going to freaking quit, right? Because I'm competitive and I don't want to be that person. And then you just keep showing up until you end up being that person, right? Yeah. And then as soon as you do, the goalpost moves a bit and you're like, ooh, now we could definitely get better, as I mentioned before, about celebrating wins. It's not going to change that characteristic. It's not going to change the fact that it's really freaking hard, right?
Sure.
And also, understanding what growth looks like sometimes can be difficult for people because typically, like, say that progress, you've seen the graphs where the progress is a straight line from like bottom to top, right? It's kind of like it's going horizontally across page and vertically. Mm-hmm. Well, then you see like the reality, and it's like a squiggly line, from point A to point B, which is more true, but I would say it's more peaks and valleys. And so, when you are sort of succeeding and you want to take a step to that next peak, if you will, there's always a valley before the peak. And I don't think people are always willing to accept that, right? That takes strength, I think, because the strength in overcoming the valleys is accepting the fact that you're about to maybe make less money. Like say you're working at and we've had some people here, they're like, hey, I want to open my own gym. I'm like, okay. But they're making a decent income. It's like, well, can you live, this is pre-franchising. It's like, can you live a year or two without any income? No, you're right up against it financially. It's like, well, then you can't open your own business.
Sure.
Now, or maybe you don't have enough saved up to do that either, right? So it's sort of like, well, you have to understand that you're going to have to sometimes take 2 steps backwards to reach that next peak. So if you think about it as like a mountain range, you've got peaks and valleys, right? So you're at this peak and you look at that higher peak and you're like, I need to be there. And then, all right, well, you're going to have to walk down in that valley first. And that valley might mean less money. It means like your performance goes down, your skill set goes down. Like you take steps backwards in a way to take a lateral step to then continue to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people are willing to weather that. I think it's disturbing for them, to have to do that. And so they just don't want to do it. So you just sit where you are because you're like, you don't understand the reality of what progress looks like. We always say like onward and upward, but it just means forward momentum. But forward momentum isn't just linear, man. It is up and down, and any reach for the next peak is going to have a valley, and that could affect a lot of different things. And the strength is like understanding that first of all, and then be willing to go into that valley to get to that next peak, which is not always, it's really hard. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, there's going to be hard times, and then you have to be that person to lead your business, right? And that's how you get to this point. It's not like you got here today alone, right? You had to lead other people. We had to show the strength, no matter if you're going in that valley or not, to keep going.
Well, and then you get a team of people like when we went from licensing to franchising, it's like we were brand new to franchising, so we're seeing it. We would laugh about it. It's like these is an emerging franchise. I'm like, we've been in business for 28 years at that point, right? We've helped 2,000 gyms worldwide plus be successful at what they do, especially with coaching. We're not new, but in the franchising world, we were new. So we were in the valley. We were not making any money. We were not, seen as experts at what we do because we just are in a new arena. It's like, well, if you want to step into that, you want to climb the next peak, right?
Yeah.
It's a big ass peak. You're going to have to step down in that valley, and that's going to mean less money, less skills, all the things that make us like super uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Which a lot of these, I think, go right into the next one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So that would be the strength as far as the way that I see it.
Yeah, so then the second one is courage, which you could argue a lot of what we just said, that you got to not only have to be strong, but you have to actually have courage to make the next step, right?
We do, and I look at courage more as like maybe the optics of it, or like maybe you're worried about, what people think, and again, it goes back to the old like what is your risk tolerance? And everybody has a different risk tolerance, right? But I think the cliche saying of like nothing risked, nothing gained is true. It really is. I mean, you can't really do anything significant without putting some things on the line. And a lot of times it's a lot. Now, you guys have heard me say this, and I still agree. Unless you have nothing and you're living in a van down by the river, I don't agree with a burn the ships approach, which is basically, again, nobody can go back. I'm going to burn the ships. And that was kind of the old analogy of like we sail into, undiscovered
Pushing
world.
all your chips
we don't
on the table.
Yeah, like you push all your money. You're like, I'm going all in. It's like I don't know anyone who's amassed any significant wealth who does that, right? But I think if you're new and you're starting out and you have nothing, it's like, well, what do you have to lose? Go all in. But all in is a different proposition than if you're my age and you've got some assets and you're like, well, I'm going to go all in. That means I'm going to put everything on this idea.
Right.
That's not a calculated way to do it, but it doesn't mean there's no risk, right? Because risk at some point becomes like your attention, your energy, yes, money, a lot of things. And part of that, and that's what I was talking about, is like what the optics of it are. What you're also risking is your reputation for yourself, which is weird. And the way that I would describe that is if you're willing to stand there and say to the world, this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. If you don't do the thing, right? If you don't define that goal clearly, or let's say you do define that goal clearly and you don't make it, that's scary. And I think for that, a lot of people is the most...
Well, the fear of failure?
Yeah, not even like, yes, for themselves, but also like once you go public and you say, like once we go to franchising, there's no hiding. Right. It's not like I got one gym and I'm like, I'm creating all these little side hustles and I'm making myself feel a bit more busy and productive than I am. Right. Fine. I've been there. But if you say, you know what, we're going to open 800 franchise locations by 2030. That's a very lofty goal. That's your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. Right. Well, once it's said and it's done, you're either doing it or you're not doing it. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what you're doing though, when you definitively decide what your goal is and you make it public, you're also defining what a failure might look like for yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing we talk about exercise with clients, like defining a goal it's definitive and you have to move towards it. And a lot of people don't do it because if they define the goal and they don't reach it, that's the definition of failure to them, right?
Yeah.
So they never set the goal, but they don't set the goal not because they don't know what it is, because they don't want to set a goal that they can't reach, thus proving themselves to be a failure, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's where I think the courage really comes from. Is like you were exposed, you have planted your flag and said, this is who I am and this is where I'm going. And you have not only defined it for the world, which you may be worried about what they would think if you didn't make it, you've defined it for yourself. And so by default, you've also defined what a failure might look like for you.
What was scarier, going to licensing, going to franchising? There's probably another one in there. Switching all the gym from one-on-one to small group.
Definitely going to franchising. But at the same time, I had stacked enough skills where it was okay, right? Because you go to franchising, it's like, look, you're going to go millions of dollars in the hole to get the thing rolling. You're also you're out there, right? I mean, you're swimming in a big wide ocean right now. Like licensing, no one had really done what we did, so we were sort of carving our own path, and we were the biggest at what we did because no one had ever done it, and so it really didn't feel like I was really exposed because I also did some consulting and I owned a fitness education company and
sure,
you know what I mean? I did a lot of speaking. And so I was making money a lot of different ways. But when you say I'm
publicly going out there saying like, this is the best way. I mean, you're putting it all out there.
You mean in licensing?
Yeah. I mean, like, you're out there speaking. It's like, hey, this is the way to do it. So, I mean,
yeah, I don't know why it didn't bother me because I think we had so many iterations of it based on who we were working with. And ultimately, like our performance was not, I mean, from a referral standpoint and a longevity standpoint, yes, our performance was going to dictate our success.
Yeah.
But literally in franchising, our franchisee performance is our success, period. So to say we're going into franchising, plus you're moving into an arena where there's a lot of money, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of competition. You're playing the same game as some really heavy hitters, right? So can you pull this off or not? You're fully exposed.
Yeah, that's true.
Licensing, there wasn't like 15 people in there competing for every job or whatever. Man, you go into franchising, it's no bullshit. It's all out there. You're either a compelling offer to an investor or you're not. You either get in front of their, these investors and franchise partners and convince them that they should join your team and your culture, or you don't.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Yep.
So I'd say that's the scariest part because it has the highest risk, but also the highest reward, right? Which they are obviously hand in hand. But I would say that was the scariest part. And you're also saying, hey, this is where we're going. You can't hide from it. Everything has to be fully, disclosed every year in your franchise documents. That's good.
Yeah.
Full transparency, but like it's all out there, right? It's not an old fitness conference where people stand around and like boost their numbers by 50% and brag about it. It's like, no. Everybody's standing around with their pants down, right? It's like, you know what's happening, 100%.
Well, you would have never, I doubt you would have ever made it, or we would have never made it this far if you didn't go through all those, getting that thicker skin through going through all that uncomfortable change within just this four walls. Like we were talking beforehand, it was like, man, you just imagine running a gym at this point. It's so less complex. Hence our model. We like it. It's so less complex than what we do now. But you went through all the trials of that and it got you licensing and then it pushed you. So you were able to handle a bigger, mountain like this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you stack, and that's going to come with the wisdom, which is next, but it's just stacking experiences, right? You prove to yourself that you're the person that you think you are. You don't prove it by thinking it. You prove it by doing the thing long enough till you're like, well, I did that. So logically I can do this. Now, again, in the strength part, it's going to be hard. I'm going to go through a valley. I'm going to be the dumbest guy in the room again. We're going to be like, we're going to not make money for a while, all the things, right? But it's okay. And if you've proven to yourself that, to your point, there's other stages that are laughable now were a huge deal at the time, right? Like moving your entire business from very successful one-on-one business to training people in a small group. It's like you're really risking blowing up your entire business and ruining it, right? It's laughable now, but at the time, a huge deal, right? Going into licensing, it's like, okay, you're going to go into an organization with that of really high performers. And, like when we did some deals with some of the largest franchises in the world, it's like, you're redoing the floor plan for a franchise that has 5,000 locations. Like that's a big deal. Right?
Yeah.
Nice feather in our cap. If you think of it that way, a little bit uncomfortable at the time, but to your point, you do the things and you do the work and you connect the dots. You get the result. You look back. You're like, all right, well, I could do that. So then you look logically the next thing, it's going to suck. You're going to go through the valley, but you think you can make it, right? Because you've proven to yourself that you can. The only way to do it is to do the thing until you prove it. So anyway, that's what I think is courage, is being willing to take the risk and also be willing to get out there and say, this is my goal, and define it clearly so that you can move towards it. And you may fail publicly, and then you may also be defining what a failure would be to you, which is terrifying for some people. There's no other way to do it, though. You got to get out there, you got to claim it, and then you got to move towards it with everything you got.
Yeah. Well, the next one is wisdom.
Yeah, I laughed at this one because, like, obviously wisdom comes with time, right? It really does. I mean, you just don't born with it, and some people certainly have a higher IQ, or you've got they've got sort of proclivity for, like, better with emotional intelligence, whatever these things are. But at the same time, it just comes with time, right? Wisdom does. And so, like, we laugh because we run EOS as a system to run our franchise team. We also teach it to franchisees, but we run it as a franchise team. And I don't have a lot of, like, KPIs or whatever, but, like, one of them that you guys joked about, because it's one of our differentiators, is our experience, right? It's like, how long have we been in business? Well, when you sit down with somebody who is looking at investing in a franchise, and there is Alloy, and then there's another franchise over here that's kind of been in existence for a couple of years, and they look at us, to your point, we have reasons for everything we do. And if anybody's like, why do you do this? It's like, oh, we tried that 5 times. That didn't work. I mean, that's experience, right? So one of our big differentiators in our current business model is experience. And people feel it. They buy into it. They recognize it. It's really just time. We're here 32 years, right? So I would say experience comes with time. I don't know that you can shortcut it other than doing something like buying into a franchise. And really what you're buying is a shortcut on all the mistakes. Yeah. Right.
To relive the 32 years mistakes. Not that we did all those last year, or 31 years.
Yeah. No, I've made a lot every year. But you're right. So you're getting a massive shortcut, but you're still, like, let's just say the wisdom is in relationship to the courage that you need to make change, or the strength that you need, right? It's like they're all interrelated in some ways.
Sure.
There's
for me on the wisdom side is we've been doing this 32 years. Suzanne's been here 25 of it. I've been here 15. I mean, there's so much time, but what we've also learned is how to grow the business properly, because we've been through it. So different things. So we kind of learn, like, one of the basic things we talk about, the who, not how, right?
Yes.
We're able to see different angles that if you didn't have the experience or the wisdom, you'd probably make terrible choices on certain things, like go figure it out by yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's why I like franchising. Is like, that's kind of what you're buying, is a tried and true business model. And we have so much experience that it is a differentiator for us. And I don't think you can shortcut it in that regard. I think you can shortcut it by investing in a franchise from a business model standpoint, and learning from all the mistakes that we've made. But I think when I look at wisdom as an individual, it just takes time. So if you don't have it, you can certainly seek out mentors and groups to join, and those people are going to really help you. But you really just have to do the thing, right? I mean, you remember the Malcolm Gladwell book? Was it Outliers, where he talked about the 10,000 hour rule?
Yep.
And I don't know where they came up with that rule. Like, some people say that's a BS rule, but it was like, if you want to get great at anything, you need to do 10,000 hours of it. And when they looked at culturally why certain cultures were better at music or math, and those two things are literally just practice based. It's like, because they practice more. Their work ethic is different, right?
I got to have at least 10,000 hours.
Here?
God, in this, yeah.
Oh, easy. How many hours do you think I have? It's like 14 million. It's like, I don't even know.
I don't even know.
I don't know the math on that. I don't either. Nobody knows. I'm 75 years old. Looking pretty good. Hashtag Alloy.
So wisdom, experience.
Let me wrap up one more thing on wisdom that I read that was interesting. So here's another reason why wisdom is important. It goes back to proving to yourself that you're the person that you're supposed to be, and you're right where you're supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. So we do some terrible things to animals, but anyway, this study is crazy. So I think it was 1957. A study was done, and the study was to basically see how long rats could tread water before they just gave up, right? Which sounds horrible, but we do shit like that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So anyway, you got these rats swimming around, and the average was about 15 minutes before they would give up, right? And some of them would drown, but some of them, they would pluck them out right at as they started to notice their behaviors before they would drown, like they'd started giving up, they would take some rats out. So some of them drowned, they studied their behaviors, then they took the other ones out before they drowned, right? Gave them some food, let them rest, put them back in the water. So 15 minutes was the average before. How long do you think it took the rats to drown the second time they were put in the water, Matt?
I have no idea. This all sounds terrible.
It does sound really depressing.
I mean, Jesus.
I didn't do the studies.
30 minutes?
Don't kill the messenger.
I don't know.
60 hours.
Based on experience and wisdom.
It is. So the point is, if you think there's a shot that you, like the rats, they thought there was a shot that they would be rescued, right? So like just paddling around and floundering and feeling like it's just a lost hope and you're getting tired and you're like, this is terrible, then you just drowned, right? And they would literally just give up. 60 hours versus 15 minutes, all because there was a small piece of knowledge in a very small brain that said, if I just keep paddling, someone's going to reach in here and grab me, right?
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy.
It's nuts. So if you think back to wisdom, part of being wise is, again, you've experienced things. You can look back and say, I thought that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I don't even remember it feeling that way now, right? So the wisdom is you keep going through things over and over, and you stack experiences like these poor rats, and you say, you know what? I'm going to keep going, because if I keep trying and I keep trying, last time I kept trying and keep trying, I was just about to give up, and then something broke, right? And then next time I went even longer, and then we broke through. And this time I'll go even longer. So I see that as the wisdom as it pertains to entrepreneurship and how you can, again, stay on this self-help personal journey, is you just start to realize that if you don't quit and you think of mistakes as learning lessons and not, they're not catastrophic, right? Then you'll just keep going. And I mean, it's at some point in time, you'll win if you just keep going. It's just really hard to do that. And it's hard to know when to quit. But the more wisdom you have, and you only build it through going through these trials, is that if you keep going 9 times out of 10, you're going to make it through. And so I thought it was an interesting study that would relate to
It is an interesting study.
It is very depressing.
I wonder what they were trying to figure out at the time.
Just to
figure out how long rats can swim for.
Well, I mean, just to show in any, any behavior, even in an animal, if there is a little bit of hope or a thought that it could get better, how much more effort would you put out, right? Yeah. That kind of idea.
What do you read at night?
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. Old creepy medical journals.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so wisdom.
Oh my God, the last one is truth.
Yeah, truth. This one was tough, but look, it's like one of our core values, sincere candor. It's like, listen, telling the truth is hard, right? And you don't have to be harsh when you do it. We always talk about you need to be kind, but you can't always be nice. There's just some truths just aren't easy to hear.
Sure.
But we've talked about it through accountability as an example. I think accountability is the ultimate form of caring, because hard conversations now or harder conversations later, to really give people constructive feedback is really uncomfortable to do. But it's a skill. It's a skill that you've had to develop and will continue to have to as your team grows underneath you. A lot of people here, are in these leadership positions that are building teams, and they have to learn to do this. And telling the truth, you don't have to be a jerk, right, doing it. But if you tell the truth in almost every situation, I can't even tell you what it will do for you as an individual and what it will do for your business. I've heard it described as dare to tell the truth in every situation, and it will put you on the grandest adventure you've ever been on in your life, which is crazy if you think about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about all the little chances. Maybe you're out somewhere and you could really help this person. Maybe you have a family member who's unhealthy and you really would like to see them eat better and exercise, but you just never say it.
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable. It's Thanksgiving, But if you really cared about them, you should say it, right? That would be the truth. Or if they ask you your opinion, you would, as nicely as possible, or as kindly as possible, give them the feedback. But you wouldn't just say, oh, you're fine. Right?
So you're that guy at Thanksgiving dinner?
No, absolutely not. But they don't even ask me anymore, because I will tell them the truth, because I care about them. You know what I mean? I want them to be healthy. And dude, if you want to be healthy, here's what you need to do, right? But I think, if you dare to tell the truth, which sounds crazy, but man, we all do it. And I'm not talking about blatant lies. I'm talking about little things, lies of omission or whatever those things are. If you dare to just stay in that lane and tell the truth, life can be a grand adventure. It really can. But it is freaking hard.
What about personal truth?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, just sometimes you gotta look yourself in the mirror and
yeah, it's the same. I think it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I think we all know. And you've heard the saying also, like, what 90% of the lies you tell to yourself, like you can tell yourself whatever you want, right? We joke about this through franchising. Like if I'm talking to a franchisee and they're like, oh, I can't find any good help. Nobody wants to work hard these days. I'm like, listen, if you're saying that, you need to look in the mirror. Because again, you're not the person you're looking for is looking for, right? At some point in time, you've got to be honest with yourself. And you can tell yourself a lot of BS, man. You can lie a lot about why things aren't working or whose fault something was, but that gets you nowhere. So to your point, not only telling the truth literally out loud, but like you got to tell it to yourself. And that's probably the hardest person to tell it to.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, quite honestly, if you just start there and you work inside out, if you can do it to yourself, it's the hardest thing to do. It'll make it much easier to do it.
I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's for a good reason. But part of being in fitness and what we do is getting people to the realization that it's them, right? Right. I mean, everybody's got an excuse for just in fitness in general why they haven't been successful. Right?
How many cliche sayings? If it is to be, it's up to me. Or like the crazy post on Instagram where it's like nobody's coming to wake you up, nobody's getting to the gym. It's all on you. Well, there's truth in all of that. There really is. And you can get support and you can do everything else. But at the end of the day, it's you. And you are responsible for yourself, your life, everything else. And it all starts, you got to tell yourself the truth. And sometimes that's what it's like. I've heard Jordan Peterson say, sit on the end of your bed and just pick one thing you shouldn't be doing today and don't do that thing. And that is brutally hard to do.
32 years in business, you ever had to say like, man, I'm screwing this up. Like,
100%.
It's just like, I got to, living in an illusional world, like I got to go fix this,
Weekly, honestly. I mean, really. I mean, all kidding aside, like you laugh, but like there's been times when I sit there, I'm like, you are not doing the things that you need to do to be the person that would grow this business. And like, I think it's a skill. Like all these things, by the way, are a skill. These aren't things that you're inherently born with or not. You can develop all of the things we've talked about today as skills, 100%. So it's a skill to be able to honestly look at yourself and say, okay, like you're not living right, or you drink too much, or your habits are bad, or you're a bit narcissistic, or you're not a great leader right now. So you need to, whatever those things are, right? You can fix them, but it all starts with like telling yourself the truth. And again, that's the hardest part. But if you can do that and you can nail that, to your point, inside out approach, it makes it much easier to have those conversations with other people, right?
Yeah.
It's just difficult to do it. And, I think when you do tell people the truth, then you inherently build trust. Because I know, like we've talked about the greatest coaches that we've had in our lives, they kind of scared you a little bit because they told you stuff that you didn't want to hear at the time. But when you look back on it, they were dead on. They had you pegged. They knew.
Yeah. You respect them the most and they got the most out of you. I mean, that's what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. And the reason that they scared you was because they did tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And you now looking back really appreciated it, right? It's kind of like the one friend you have that calls you on your bullshit. That's your really good friend.
Right.
The friends that just let you skate are the ones that let you drive home drunk and they think it's funny, as opposed to the guy who you hate that night who's like, give me your keys, give me your keys. That's the person who's got your back, right? That's the truth teller, right?
Yeah.
So start with you and then inside out from there. But if you can do that with other people, especially in your organization, as we're talking mostly about business, it'll build trust with your team because they'll know there's no passive aggressiveness. They know exactly where they stand at all times. There's a comfort in that. There's also a lot of accountability in that. They'll start to mirror that with their teams, right? So it's really important. And we talk about even all the way past through down to your customers, because if you treat your team that way, they're going to treat your customers that way. And we're in a business, to your point, where you're sitting down with people and saying, hey, none of this is anybody's fault but yours. Like you have to do these things. And we're going to lay out a plan, but I can't do it for you, right? And so treating them that way will allow them to treat your customers that way. And that will build trust. And we've talked about, there's something called the Edelman Barometer, which is sort of a worldwide measure of trust. I think the 4 quadrants are the 4 things they measure: government, NGOs, which is like non-government, which is sort of marries up to it, like Red Cross or something like that, right? Private business and media. And nobody right now makes it into competent and trustworthy, right? It's like, okay, media, not competent, not trustworthy. Got it. Private business, definitely competent, definitely not trustworthy, right?
Yep.
Or big business. You got government, not competent, not trustworthy. NGOs, trustworthy because they're trying to do good things, but not competent business-wise, right? So trust is something, it's like a tangible thing that you can be measured. I think it's a currency these days, especially with the distrust and all those organizations we talked about and how rampant that is. If you can tell the truth and live it and back it up with your actions and do all the things, then you're cooking with oil. You have a real currency there.
you saying you can't have a business for 32 years and be untrustworthy?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it's so funny because like every now and then, like even when I was still in the gyms, you go back 10, 15 years and someone would be all bent. And I'd already been in business for friggin' 15 years, which is already like bucking the odds. And someone's like, well, this is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, I promise you it's exactly what it looks like. I've been in business. I wouldn't have been here for 15 years doing what you're claiming that happened, right? Which is true. So you're right. Like, I mean, again, you're going to get exposed. Tell the truth, treat people well, build trust, and then you can lose it. So just do what you say, like keep it, right? But you're not going to be able to do any of that, to your point, Matt, if you don't look in the mirror every day and be honest about who you are and where you can improve and how you can affect people.
100%.
So that's it, folks. I know it was pretty, it sounds like pretty basic, but still, man.
It's pretty good. I liked it.
Did you?
Yeah, it was solid.
I was suffering this year. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm really busy. I blew right past 32 years like it didn't even exist. It's kind of a weird year anyway. 33 sounds lucky, Double threes.
Double threes, we going to blow it up.
So strength, courage, wisdom, truth. I hope that helps you guys. What I say? I hope that helps you guys. The whiskey's kicking in. And I'm on cold medicine, by the way.
That's great.
Yeah.
33 years, I want a podcast room.
You want your own podcast?
No, not my own. We want to get out of a legit podcast room.
Well, we've got one we could build out now. We've got an old massage room we could build out, but our podcast is really, just for you guys listening, we make this so that people that are interested in joining the franchise family as a franchisee can hear about our culture and processes we have in place. We're not trying to be in the podcast business.
So we can have a podcast room?
I'm trying to tell Matt the truth, as I talked about earlier. He ain't getting it. So let me just shoot straight and we'll wrap it up with this.
It was
you ain't
your
getting a fucking podcast room. What do you want me to say, Matt?
It was your idea.
All right, you guys. Appreciate you hanging in there for the last 32 years, and we'll hopefully stick around for the next 32. Peace.